Yo YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy SalvationsElite. We're back with another video, guys, and boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, all of you around the world, man. Rostermania is about to be upon us again. It's been a little while since the last Rostermania, so it's about that time to make it happen once again. And this one is set to be an insane one. I mean, my goodness. And with all the changes to professional COD when it comes to the Call of Duty League, franchising, and everything else, there is going to be so much movement. Like Temp even said himself, like he thinks every single team's going to be different. And so we're going through everything we need to know about Rostermania today. All the factors, what's going into it, and how it's going to set up and when it starts. Literally everything. All right, guys, so it's about to be a wild one. I'm dropping some Modern Warfare gameplay in here because I thought, why not? We got the alpha going. I need to play a ton today to make sure we get enough gameplay to use for the next few weeks and go moving forward and everything else. So I'm pumped to play that. So be on the lookout for that on Twitter. Follow me or whatever. With that plug, finally, let's get into the video. First, before we even talk about like the rumors or like what's actually happening with pros right now, I think it's important to break down what we know about the Call of Duty League when it comes to Rostermania, the timing on it, how it's going to go down, and everything else. So, first of all, it's 5v5. We talked about this in yesterday's videos. There's two videos yesterday if you guys didn't get a chance to see them. We broke down all the Call of Duty League information so far. In the first video and the second video, we solely talked about the substitutions element, which we'll mention briefly here. So I highly recommend you guys go watch those videos. Another plug, but those are really important. They're good to know. And so again, like we talked about yesterday, the roster size is 7 to 10. You have to have at least 7 players is the minimum, 10 is the max, and that's going to play a major role in competitive COD and inside of this Rostermania. And then you have to think about the mid-series substitutions and how that's going to come into play, where teams might be willing to like have 7 or 8 or 9 or even 10 really good players on their roster that could actually play in the pro league and compete through substitutions, whether it's like S&D specialists. But again, we talked about that all yesterday. So the rest that we have to consider is the what franchises are actually in the league. And then of course they talked about the terms of the contracts and how that all works with signing dates and everything else. So we're going through all that now. It's important to know what teams are returning to the league and which ones are new. So there's 3 organizations currently that have players that are going to be in the league next year. So there's OpTic, Immortals, you know, Envy, and there's Splyce. So OpTic's going to be in LA, Envy's going to be in Dallas, and Splyce is going to be in Toronto. And there's currently 6 other teams: Atlanta, New York, Paris, a second Los Angeles franchise, Minnesota, and Florida that are also announced. And why that's important to know for Rostermania is because they already announced the differences between these 3 teams. So the 3 current teams that are currently in the league have the ability to start re-signing their players in 2 days on August 26th. So that's when you'll be able to actually start re-signing your players, negotiating those new contracts. The Call of Duty League is requiring all players to re-sign new Call of Duty contracts that are like within the terms of the Call of Duty League. And so everyone has to re-sign a new contract, whether or not, you know, you're currently on a team. But that allows all of the current teams to have a little bit of an advantage or a little leg up or, you know, a reasonable advantage on the newer teams when it comes to re-signing their own players. So the currently 6 announced new teams have to wait a week till September 3rd to be able to negotiate contracts with players. And that's when Rostermania is really going to start getting that gas, getting that fuel. So that's really when players are going to start moving and news is going to really start breaking. So what's really weird is that we only currently have 9 teams announced. And the rumor was that they want to do 12 teams, 10, 11, 12. I mean, you have to expect that at least we're going to have 10. So we're going to have at least 10. I think they're aiming for 12. The only 2 rumored teams that so far, we talked about this yesterday as well. The only 2 teams rumored so far is FaZe and Reciprocity. Skrapz did say that FaZe he thinks has about an 80% chance to get in. That's what he's hearing. So there is a good chance that FaZe ends up getting in. Reciprocity is an interesting one as well. They might be able to get in, but it's hard to say at this point. So with that said, here's some of the terms of the contracts. I'm kind of just going to read them because they're a little lengthy, but it's important to know these going into Rostermania because it's going to have an effect on where players end up and how teams are going to approach starting to sign these guys. All right, so let's just read them off. So the first thing is, for the avoidance of doubt, players who are currently under contract with an existing organization remain subject to the terms of that contract when they negotiate new league contracts. So players who have big contracts currently are still under those contracts, and that remains important moving forward. So like, let's say the rumor was Gunless had like a $100,000 buyout. So let's just say that's the case. And so if a team wants to sign Gunless, they have to buy out his $100,000 contract to re-sign him to a new one or something along those lines. So that's important in all aspects for any player whose contract is in that case. They have to, you know, buy out the current contract. So then the salaries are also something that's really important to consider. I mean, the minimum base salary is $50,000 per player per year with health benefits and retirement benefits. So a nice little hookup for the players. And of course, teams are also required to distribute at least 50% of the prize pool or the prize winnings to the players, which I mean only makes sense. So the next thing is that all pro contracts will be guaranteed contracts, like in the NFL, how you hear like, you know, they sign like an $85 million contract, but only $30 million is guaranteed. But in this situation, if you sign a contract, all of the money is guaranteed. And so during this year, if you're signing a contract, you have to get bought out to change teams. So that is something important to consider as well. And then the final thing that's also really important, I'm just going to read this one straight away. Existing Call of Duty World League teams that are transitioning into the new league. So that's, again, currently OpTic, Envy, and Splyce. Maybe FaZe, maybe Reciprocity if they end up getting a deal. So those teams transitioning into the new league will have the right to match a competing offer made to a player on their current roster from another team in the league. So for example, if New York or Atlanta wants to sign one of the OpTic guys, it's not going to be easy to get those guys off that OpTic roster because of their ability to match those contracts. So the final few things to consider: all teams may offer their players housing in the form of a suitable place to live or cash stipend, but are not required to do so. If a team does not offer housing, it must submit a plan to the league office detailing how it will assist players in finding housing during the season. The league does not require the players to live in the city they represent. That's important. But the thing is, Envy has already come out and said they're going to require their players to live in Dallas if they sign a contract with them. So part of the contract to sign with Envy will be to move to Dallas and live there. And that's 100% going to come into play when players are trying to decide where they want to go. Like, do I have to live in New York to play for New York if I live currently in Los Angeles? I don't want to move to New York, but can I just stay in LA and move to New York? You know, that type of stuff is going to be really important. So it's pretty bold on Envy's side to force their players to live there, because there are some players that may just not be willing to move, you know? So that is really important to consider. So the final two things is 2 players on each roster are allowed to be on their own roster in the Path to Pro League, or the amateur league that's going to be competing during the season. So let's say a team wants to have 7 pro players on their team, and they want to have 2 amateur pro players, guys who are competing on both levels, you know? So that is something to consider. I'm totally expecting that most teams are going to have 8 pro players and then 2 like amateur guys, and they're going to send them down to the Path to Pro League to compete on their own teams down there. That should be pretty basic. Otherwise, they're going to have 7 pro players and then maybe 2 amateur players. So it's going to be pretty similar. But I think most rosters are going to be 9 or 10 players overall. So the final thing here is player trades among teams in the Pro League may take place through the majority of the 2020 season. So that means apparently, just like the NFL or the NBA, you can trade players throughout the whole season. But it's not like free agency or they can just sign players, but you will be able to trade players almost throughout the whole year. So that's really interesting. It's not like Rostermania where MLG would have roster locks where you just literally could not do anything. It sounds like through the Pro League, you'll be able to make changes, make trades throughout the Pro League time. So there could be big roster news throughout the Pro League even while the games are going on. This probably could have been like 2 or 3 videos, but I want to do this all in like one mega video. And this is the player movement that we know so far. So I'm going to just list them off, and I'll probably just put a picture here so you guys can see them all. Priestahh, Crowder, and Attach are back on FaZe. Rated said he might be going pro in FIFA, depending on what happens with the whole roster thing. Frosty said he's a free agent. Royalty is an unrestricted free agent. Accuracy is an unrestricted free agent. Karma said he might quit if Chronuses are used. Unfortunately, I feel like they're going to be, unless they force every player to use wired mode on the PS4, which is possible. But the difference is that there's like an extra 2 milliseconds of input lag with the wired mode versus a Cronus. That's going to be the debate. I don't know. Karma doubled down on that. So that's something to keep an eye out for. And then JCap, Apathy, and Exotic are free agents. Apathy is a restricted free agent, so that is something to consider. So that is all the news we know so far, but it's gonna get crazier and crazier as like the weeks go along because of how teams are negotiating their contracts and everything. So expect so much more news in the next few weeks about like specific players. So let's just go through a few predictions and some thoughts. I wouldn't say predictions, but more like thoughts and what we need to consider going into Rostermania. So first of all, teams are gonna have to consider the balance between winning and branding. So like let's say, for example, signing a guy like Envoy versus signing a guy like, I don't know, Crim, you know, where Crim has the branding, but he might not be as good as Envoy. So it's gonna be interesting to watch that balance with teams, how they balance branding versus talent or winning, you know? So I think the next thing that's really gonna be interesting is like location and how that's gonna work with players trying to move cities or wanting to move, like specifically with Envy. That gets really interesting, especially when you start thinking about the OpTic situation, where if Envy's requiring their guys to live in Dallas, all right, and Scump, Crim, and Karma all moved to Dallas. Are they going to want to move again? Are they going to be okay with moving? I mean, Scump just built a house. Why would he want to move, you know? And Karma has his family. Would Crim want to move as well? I mean, I think the OpTic roster to Envy is going to make a lot of sense. I 100% believe that Hook will stay on Envy, though. He's back now from loan from Splyce, you know? It's going to be really interesting how that plays out. I think OpTic 100% could end up on Envy. It'll be interesting to see who ends up, like, getting dropped. TJ? Karma retiring? I don't know how that would work. I'm sure Dashy leaving to another team, getting bought out. I don't know how that would work necessarily, but I would not be surprised at all if at least Scump and Crim ended up teaming with Hook on Envy. That would be something, that's like the only type of like thought that anybody has right now, but it makes a lot of sense. Those are kind of all the things to consider. There's not very many rumors right now to go through. The only like prediction that I had so far was the Hook and OpTic situation. So besides that, we have no other like rumors. The COD burner's gone now, so we're gonna have way less information potentially moving into this year. It's gonna be really interesting to see how that works with leaks and news and everything else now that we don't have the COD burner to fill us in. But regardless, guys, this was a really long video, longer than normal for sure, but I hope you guys enjoyed it and found something entertaining about it. If you guys did, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you guys really enjoy it. I appreciate all the support so much, guys. It really means a lot to me. I'm trying to do this full time now, kind of taking some risks. I'm not getting a job for at least the next few months, trying to do YouTube full time, make this thing a reality. We're on the path to it right now, but we really need to see some massive growth in the next few weeks, months, moving into like December, January, if we want to be able to stick around and do this thing full time. So I really appreciate every like, every comment, every subscription. It means a lot to me. But as always, guys, I'm your boy SalvationsElite, and we'll see you next video. Next video tomorrow, by the way, is Call of Duty Champs, like breakdown, review, summary of the Black Ops 4 season. And then I think we're going to be doing like a top 10 players of Black Ops 4 video maybe on Monday. That'd be pretty exciting. So with that said, guys, as always, I'm your boy SalvationsElite, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.